For this program, we have another Moral Marathon for you, this time dealing with the winter stars. And this should be good, with the winter stars are the most magnificent of the entire year. With me, Chris Lintott.
Well, I agree, Patrick. The winter stars are amongst the most beautiful. We've got a constellation of experts to help guide us around. As usual, Paul Abel, Chris North, and of course, Pete Lawrence.
And what we've done this time, we've split the marathon up into two parts. So the first 25 objects are naked eye and binocular, and the last 25 are for telescopic viewing.
And you can see the full list at the website at bbc.co.uk/sky at night.
So, with that underway, we should get a move on, and let's start with object number 1, Chris, the Pleiades.
The Pleiades is a brilliant object to look at, whatever your observing method, and with naked eyes it's particularly beautiful. It's also sometimes called the Seven Sisters, because there are apparently 7 stars to be seen with the naked eye, although reports vary greatly depending on your sky conditions and all sorts. So I've seen fewer and more than 7 on different occasions.
Trouble is, one of them is variable.
Is it? So that doesn't help, and of course there are many more in the cluster as well, Pete. But there is some gas around the stars.
That's right, there's what's called a reflection nebula around, and if you take a long exposure photograph of that region, you pick up this beautiful sort of blue misty cloud around there, and that shines because of the light reflected off of the stars.
So the Pleiades are in Taurus. The other cluster in Taurus, though, Patrick, the Hyades.
The Hyades have several easy naked eye stars.
It doesn't look too much like a cluster, Pete.
Well, if you compare it with the Pleiades, it looks completely different. It's got a very distinctive V shape, and the V is on its side, and that's supposed to represent the face of Taurus the bull.
And at the moment, the stars of the Hyades, they have their own proper motions, and they're going towards Aldebaran.
So it's actually drawing together, is it, over time?
They are drawing together, of course. That means the longer you leave it to see the Hyades, the better the view will be. You might have to wait a little while.
And it'll be cloudy.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, from those two, I think object 3 is, well, in some sense a cluster of stars, but a much bigger one. It's the Triangulum Galaxy.
It's the most distant object you can see with the naked eye. It's about 3 million light years away.
Paul, this one's actually harder than it seems to find. Is this a binocular object?
I think so. I made the great mistake when I first got into astronomy of looking for deep sky objects with very, very powerful eyepieces, and you do need small telescope or binoculars for this sort of thing. The main problem with it is it's a beautiful face on the spiral galaxy, but it's got very low surface brightness.
With a spiral galaxy like our Milky Way, Patrick, as you've often said, you can think of a spiral galaxy as 2 fried eggs back to back, clapped back to back, I think is the phrase. And with M33, we're looking straight down onto the white part and onto the yolk, and so that light gets spread out a lot across a high area. So even though it's a bright object, technically visible with the naked eye, Pete, it's quite difficult.
I have seen it with the naked eye.
I thought you might have.
The other week, actually, I went out and we had a lovely clear sky, the first one for ages, and I went out and I deliberately looked for it, but I can't see it when we get clear skies down here with direct vision. And what you have to do is you have to use a technique called averted vision, which is something astronomers use quite a lot, actually, but basically if you're looking for a faint object, you don't look directly at it, you look slightly to the side of it, and that puts the faint light onto a more sensitive part of your eye. And it's a technique you can learn quite easily.
Yeah, just practice looking out the corner of your eye, so I can look over here but pay attention to you.
Do I look brighter?
You're certainly easier to see in faint light. Yes.
3.3 million light years away, so if you can see it with the naked eye, you're looking a long way back.
Yeah, so we're seeing it as it was 3 million years ago. Let's come back to our own galaxy, Patrick. Should we go to a cluster next?
Beehive cluster in Cancer, that's easily seen.
Yes, it is.
When a cluster of stars, that's exactly what it is.
It is, yes.
And a cluster of about 3 or 4 different names as well.
Oh,
it's my favourite. I've no idea why, but they called this particular cluster, which looks like a faint misty patch up on the dome of the heavens, it was called the exhalation of piled up corpses. So there's a cheerful thought for you on a winter's night.
Isn't that supposed to be due to the fact that in mythology it was thought to be a portal for souls leaving this world and moving to the next? Perhaps when they got there, they just left all the corpses behind.
Indeed. But back in this world, it's easily a naked eye object. You can see it, try the averted vision technique again, and then binoculars, it's beautiful.
It is. It's one of these objects that's really made for binoculars, I think, because as soon as you put any sort of power into a telescope, a lot of the stars vanish out of the field of view, and it loses its magic. Yeah, definitely.
Why don't we come for what must be the easiest object of all? And Paul, this is definitely your province and Patrick's, Jupiter. We've got the red spot on the list separately, but Patrick, what about Jupiter with the naked eye and with binoculars? What should people look for?
On Jupiter's, mainly it's a very bright object, brighter than almost anything in the sky. And you can't mistake it, it's too bright to be a star.
And moons with binoculars?
They should be easy with binoculars.
Have you ever seen them with the naked eye, Patrick?
I personally haven't.
I haven't either, but...
Anyone? Pete?
No, I haven't. But I think the one thing about Jupiter at the moment is that because it is nestled in Taurus, very close to the V-shaped Hyades cluster, and it looks absolutely dramatic. I've been doing this over the last few weeks whenever the sky's been clear, and it's just gorgeous. The Pleiades up there, the Hyades, Aldebaran, and Jupiter. It's a must-see thing.
What more could you ask for? Huh?
Venus is there, and a fireball.
Well, Paul, moving on through the list, we're coming to our whole list of open clusters. Messier 36, 37 and 38.
Quite easily seen.
You can get them done in one go with binoculars. You just go, and
Exactly.
you've got them all done.
Object number 13 on the Moore Winter Marathon list. I confess I have never heard of, and Patrick, I don't know whether you have, it's the Celestial G. Do you have any idea what this is?
Who invented that one? I do not know.
Well, Pete,
It was a chap called
It
Graham.
was not on, it was not on my list. And even now, I don't know what it is.
Pete, enlighten us.
Okay, well, the Celestial G is a good example of what's known as an asterism, and it's basically a bit of fun in the night
So
sky.
an asterism is a collection of stars.
It's an unofficial pattern of stars in the night sky, and this one's a bit of fun because it helps people locate or hunt down some of the brighter stars in the winter night sky. And to draw it, you have to join the dots, basically.
Okay, where would you start? I guess Orion is probably the most distinctive shape in that. You find the belt with the two bright
You
stars,
could go from the
Betelgeuse
belt
and Rigel.
backwards, or Aldebaran, which is easy to see.
Should we go to a more obscure constellation? There's actually, this is one of my favourite objects on the list, number 17, which is known as Kemble's Cascade.
Oh, yes.
But before we get there, Paul, what on earth is Camelopardis?
Oh, I wish you hadn't asked me that, because I don't actually know.
Well, this is one of the fainter constellations.
Something I call the giraffe.
Yes.
This is the giraffe.
Yeah,
It's the giraffe.
Camelopardis translates as giraffe, I think, because they thought it was a cross between a camel and a leopard.
It might be anything, frankly.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
But where is
things.
this constellation, Pete?
Well, it's next to Perseus, and what you're looking for with binoculars is a bright star, or brightish star, on the edge of naked eye visibility, but there's a line of about 20 fainter stars either side of it, which actually covers quite a large distance. So the whole thing resembles a beautiful waterfall of starlight ending up
And
in
they're all
a
different
splash
colours.
pool.
They're all different colours as well, aren't they? And it's so wonderful to see all these different colour stars.
It's a beautiful thing.
Let's come back to familiar territory, Patrick. What about Orion? What about Orion's sword?
It's a lovely thing. Below Orion's sword, you see the great nebula. It's a real glory.
It's lovely to see. It is one of those things that even in light polluted Leicester, you can tell that it's not a star and that there's something misty there.
There's a fuzziness there.
A little fuzziness there. And of course, binoculars bring it out very well.
Long time ago, our sun was formed from a nebula like that.
Well, it's of all the things we've looked at on the list so far, it's the youngest place where stars are forming, because stars are currently forming there right now. So the stars in the centre of the Orion Nebula will eventually become a cluster of stars, and it will become the Orion Open Cluster or something in a few million years' time. For the moment, we see the diffuse gas around it. It's the nearest large region of space where stars are forming to the Sun.
Now, something I didn't know before looking at this list was that there's actually more to be seen around here. You've not just got the sword and the nebula, but object 25 on our list, the last of the naked eye and binocular objects, is a cluster around Orion's belt. And I'd never realised that was an actual cluster.
That's right. It's called Colander 70. I mean, Colander is just a name given to another list
Just
of
a
objects.
catalogue. Yep.
If you're looking at Orion's belt, which is probably the most famous straight line in the entire night sky, you're looking right at the heart of Colander 70. And you can see other stars which are around it with the naked eye, but with a pair of binoculars on there, you see many, many more faint stars in that region. So that is another true open cluster, and you can tick it off the list once you've seen it.
So if anybody does decide to image or draw any of these lovely objects in Orion or any of the objects we've discussed, I think it'd be great if they could send them to our Flickr site so we can all have a look, and you can find that on our Sky at Night website.
Well, I think we need to take a breath here. That's the end of the naked eye and binocular section. But before we move on to the telescopic objects, we've got a report from Chris North, who went to a star party in the wilds of the Brecon Beacons.
I've come to the Cumdee campsite in South Wales for the first astro camp of the Baker Street Irregular Astronomers. I'd like to catch a glimpse of galaxies, nebulae, binary stars, and later on the moon, and to share in some of the fun. Some of the objects on the Moor Winter Marathon will be up later, and it'd be good to get a few of those under my belt. Their usual stomping ground is Regent's Park in central London, with its eye-watering light pollution. But for 2 nights only, they've swapped the city skyline for lovely dark skies, here in the heart of the Brecon Beacons. Right, you take one end. I'm here for night 2 with my dad, Derry, who got me into astronomy as a young lad. On our family camping holidays, he would often point out the stars and constellations to my brother and me, so this feels like old times. My dad and I have brought with us a range of telescopes to this star party, from the lower end of the price spectrum, say £100 for a 3-inch refractor, to a few £100 for a slightly bigger refractor with a go-to mount that'll go wherever you ask it to. And then if you've got, say, £1,000 or so, you get a bigger telescope that'll let us see the deeper sky objects. Paul, Ralph and Tom help run the Baker Street Irregular Astronomers.
We've had beginners, we've had seasoned imagers up there at the top. I mean, there's a massive range, and some people who've come here actually don't have telescopes at all. And I think that might be a first to come to a star party without a telescope. So, yeah, we have a really, really broad range here.
Hopefully you're going to have the nice, clear, crisp skies of the Brecon Beacons tonight. What kind of objects are you hoping to look at that you wouldn't normally get a chance to?
Very rarely get to see things like M82. We wouldn't be able to normally see the Veil Nebula without filters, and we're just really looking forward to being able to see globular clusters and the whole range of things.
And seeing the Milky Way, it's something we don't even get a hint of in London. I mean, and to be here and see the Milky Way and the dust lane running through it, and just see all that detail. So, really looking forward to seeing that.
The Londoners have been joined by enthusiasts from all over, from Bolton, from Lancashire, the Peak District, and even as far afield as Scotland, all sharing in the fun. Well, it looks like we have a family outing going on here, so where's everyone come from?
Well, we're from Tring in Hertfordshire.
OK, so you've come a fair way to...
Yeah, about 3.5 hours in the car, but hopefully worth it.
Do you get out observing very often at all with it, do you think?
Yeah, most of the time when it's clear sky.
What kind of objects do you like to look at through the telescope?
Milky Way. Milky Way.
Milky Way.
Milky Way,
And the donut. And the donut.
They love the donut, the Ring Nebula.
The Ring Nebula, oh,
Yeah.
and it probably looks brilliant through a telescope this size. Well, guys, this is a nice, efficient setup you look to have here. And so what objects are you hoping to see with this tonight that you don't normally get to look at?
We usually look at double stars and we like looking at Jupiter. It's very good. We see all 4 moons. But today we're trying to learn how to see different deep sky objects like nebula and stuff, because we don't have a motor drive, so we're going to try and do it manually tonight.
So yeah, he's got a list of things we're going to try and find.
Yeah.
So we'll go through that one by one.
So a list of objects to find, that sounds like a great idea. Someone should make a programme about that.
All right.
Sounds like my dad and me many years ago. There are still a few hours to sunset, so I've got some time to cook up some sausages and beans for tea. Right, Dad, how do you fancy some slightly burnt sausages and possibly overdone baked beans?
Sounds delightful, Chris. I'm glad I left you to do the cooking.
Well, it's about 10 at night. For an astronomer, that's early evening. And I'm really looking forward to tonight. There's a real buzz about the place. The sky's clear, the sky's dark. I can see the Milky Way overhead and the dust lanes through it. I'm really looking forward to getting a view through not just my telescope, but lots of the other telescopes that are here as well. Our camera has picked up the Plough, that well-known asterism which is in our skies all year round. And also Cassiopeia, the W, which will be high in the winter sky. And there's even a little satellite passing by. Some call them celestial vermin, but I think they're good fun. The astronomers have settled down to start enjoying the pleasures of the night. So this is a beast of a telescope you got here. Have a look through. I've seen hundreds of pictures of the Veil Nebula, but I've never seen it with my own eyes. That's actually quite amazing. That's brilliant. Any more seasoned astronomers?
Yep. I am reasonably so.
I'm the wife that'd rather be in bed.
How's the night going so far?
Yeah, brilliant. We managed to get the donut fairly early on.
Yeah.
The Ring Nebula.
The Ring Nebula, M57, or the Donut to its friends. It's a star which has lost its outer layers, and to the naked eye looks like a wispy smoke ring. But long exposure photographs reveal the subtle colours in this beautiful object. You can definitely see that's a ring.
Yeah.
And it's odd because it almost looks like an out of focus star, except every other star in the field of view is in focus. So it's definitely a tiny little ring, or a donut, I suppose.
Sometimes, like, I always say to my dad, like, I just want to, like, scoop it out of the sky and put it in a jar and, like, keep it with me. It just looks like one of those cool things.
Yeah, it is a lovely object to look at. As the night rolls on, the sky above changes, and a whole new set of constellations come into view. Right overhead, we have Cygnus the Swan, a favourite in the summer skies, but which will soon fly away as winter approaches. And rising in the east is Auriga the Charioteer, which contains a few of the objects in the Moor Winter Marathon, but the naked eye is dominated by the brilliant star Capella. As it rises through the thickest parts of the atmosphere, the scattering of its light causes Capella to flicker all the colours of the rainbow. Well, the telescope's moving, so it's obviously pointing at something different. What are you aiming at now?
Right, we're going to go on to M13, Great Globular Cluster in Hercules.
Oh, very nice.
Just about to finish slewing now. It really is a nice view.
Oh, that's a gorgeous view. I mean, these clusters can just look... You sort of think they're just going to be one sort of round, fuzzy ball. There's so much structure in there. There's tendrils of stars coming out.
Trying to pick out as many individual stars as possible.
Yeah, you can sort of imagine you can see the individual stars. So I wonder whether that is my imagination running wild. For now, I'll believe it.
You can always bump up the magnification.
I'm having so much fun, I'd forgotten that Dad's still minding the telescopes. I wonder what he's been looking at. Right, and Dad, how's the night going so far?
Hello, Chris. Well, that, allegedly, is Uranus.
Is there anything in there?
Yeah, so you can just see a faint disc through that scope.
Yeah, it looks like a disc.
Yeah, some people say it's blue. I'm not sure that I believe them. But if that's Uranus, that's the first time I've seen it. So I'll tick that one off. Yeah. You hear these shouts go up every now and then. Was it when a meteor or a fireball goes? I think they've missed every one tonight.
So that's a first for both Dad and me. He's seen Uranus, and I've seen the Veil Nebula. Fantastic.
You can see the different colours as well, which is nice.
Well, John, Jenny, you've got a pretty big telescope here. What have you been looking at so far?
We've been looking at Albira. We tried taking some photos, so hopefully they'll come out. And we've got on the Ring Nebula now, and that's it so far.
Coming here to this event has been a really good idea. You know, it's given us a chance to talk to other people, get lots of tips, you know, and we've probably gained more information in this one event than the past 6 months, you know, trying to find out for ourselves. So this kind of event is, you know, if anybody is thinking of going to one, don't think about it, do it.
It's midnight and the young astronomers have gone to bed, but the diehards still have a hit list of objects they want to see.
My daughter made a list just before we came out, so we've had a few things. Managed to get M17, the Omega Nebula, earlier on, and now I'm just waiting for the M1 Crab Nebula to come up. I might bottle it in a bit and go to bed, I think.
Finally, I get to tick off 4 more Winter Marathon objects. First, the Pleiades as it rises over the hill, followed by the familiar V-shape of the Hyades, and in it, the double star Theta Tauri, number 16 in the list. And hot on their heels is Jupiter, which through binoculars is accompanied by a few of its moons. One of the first things Dad showed me through his telescope many years ago.
I'm quite happy to wind down now.
Well, I think what I'll do then is I'm going to pack up my telescope and wait for the moon to rise, get a view of the moon, and then possibly call it a night there.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
The moon is a lovely sight, but at 3 AM it's time to call it a night and get into my sleeping bag. It's been a great night and a great star party.
Well, Chris, you managed to get clear skies, so that's most of the battle won. But Pete, what is on the telescopic list, and how did you put it together?
So what we wanted to do here was actually introduce people to some objects which they may not have been able to see before. We've deliberately picked objects here which you can see with small telescopes, so there's no need to be afraid of actually trying to find these objects. And in fact, if you're worried about where to look, there are lots and lots of charts, etc., available in our guides, which are available from the Sky at Night website.
Good. Okay, well, where should we start? Let's start with a familiar object.
One of my favourites is the nebula, which is known as the Eskimo Nebula, which is in Gemini, the twins. Now, this is an amazing thing to look at, and a lot of people I know have never seen it through a telescope. In fact, I only saw it myself for the first time last year, and I was amazed that I hadn't looked at it before, because it is such a beautiful thing to look at. And this bit on the outside, which has lines of material which are estimated to be about a light year in length.
These
in reality.
filaments.
They're like filaments moving away from the star. They make the fur hood of the Eskimo. So it does fit the description really well.
What's going on here is that a planetary nebula is a dying sun-like star that shed its outer layers. And so all that structure is in the layers of the star that have already been pushed off the surface of the star.
Yeah.
And you'll only see a planetary nebula like this for a few tens of thousands of years. So we're very lucky to see these things. Well, Chris, which objects on the list caught your eye?
There was one called the Flame Nebula that also goes by the name the Flaming Star Nebula. So if you look at that through a telescope, which is something I very much like to do, I've not seen it before, but the pictures I have seen, it looks like flames coming out of a star, which is how it got its name, I assume. And this is gas that's been lit up by the star at the base of the flame.
One really nice thing about this object is that star's a runaway star. It's moving very quickly across the sky, and if you trace it backwards, you realise that a couple of million years ago, it probably formed in that giant star-forming region in Orion that we were talking about.
There's a couple of others as well. There's Mu Microscopium and 53 Arietis, also are runaway stars which have been thrown out of that region as well.
And if any of the viewers want to see Mu Microscopium, then they can write to you
and send
directly.
them to the Flickr site as well, so you can see them. We also have the Crab Nebula, which is one of my favourite, which is a wonderful supernova remnant.
I mean, Pete, I've always found it interesting to look, especially in a wide field. You can actually see quite a lot of the structure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think where the disappointment comes from is that when you look at pictures of it which have been taken, for example, by the Hubble, it looks amazing.
It really does. And in the X-ray, it looks even better. if you had
X-ray eyes. It's a fascinating thing to look at through a telescope.
Well, while we're talking about stars that are dying or have died, let's talk about one that's on its way out. And actually, this is one of the objects on the list I've never seen. So this is on my to-do list. This is number 34, Heinz Crimson Star. Have you heard of Heinz Crimson Star, Patrick?
I know of it, yes.
It's R. Leporus in Lepus, the hare. And it's beneath Orion, basically.
It is. It's actually right up in the top left of the corner of Lepus, if you like, and it's a very, very red star. It's what's called a carbon star.
Beautiful red colouring, actually.
It is.
I want to see it because Hind, the discoverer, described it as a drop of blood on a black field. And that's such a poetic description that if you've all seen... Chris, have you seen Hind's Crimson Star?
I've never seen it, but as you say, it's on
one for you and I. Another one on the list, Caldwell 13, the Owl Cluster.
This is a lovely cluster to look at. I know Paul's not keen on clusters, but this one has a personality to it. Now there are two stars there, Phi 1 and Phi 2 Cassiopeae, and if you look at it through a telescope using a fairly wide field again, so a low power eyepiece, those two stars look like the eyes of an owl, or perhaps the eyes of an alien. And there's a line. Well, there's a line of a star.
This is getting increasingly desperate. We let you have the celestial G, but two stars that look like the eyes of an alien.
No,
okay,
stay
fine.
with me. So you've got the two stars like that, and you've got a line of stars underneath, which makes it look like he's got his arms.
I thought you were going to say
extended.
a bicycle for a second there. Yeah. What will you be looking for, particularly, Paul, from the list?
From the list, I am actually going to go for something I've never seen before, and that is this difficult galaxy M74 in Pisces. This is the face-on spiral galaxy. It's probably one of the most difficult galaxies, difficult objects even, in the Messier catalogue, and I've always given it the brush off. I've always never really bothered with it. I wouldn't mind trying to find that, actually, because it's not in an easy part of the sky.
There's a trick for this one, and it's very important.
I'm all ears.
What you do, if you use a low power, you can see the core. and then if you look really carefully, again using that technique of averted vision, you suddenly start to see sort of blotches in the spiral arms.
And the blotches you're seeing through your telescope, the bright blotches, are these small regions where stars are currently forming.
You notice in the winter sky there's very few globular clusters around.
But these big cities of stars.
Yeah, I rather like those actually. Globular clusters are lovely. And one that does take my fancy is M79. This is a globular cluster in Lepus. Now, it's been on my list to find it and see it, which is a fancy way of saying I've never seen it. Is it terribly difficult to find?
No, not really, because Lepus looks a bit like the number 8. Okay,
Right.
that's what the
On its
constellation
side,
on
yeah.
its side. So like an infinity symbol,
yeah.
if you like. And where the crossover point is, there are two stars. There's Alpha and Beta Lepori. And if you follow the line they make down and extend it for the same distance again, that points exactly at M79.
Very useful.
The other good thing about this cluster, if you're interested in such things, is that it's not part of our galaxy.
Isn't
So
it?
it's one of the very few globulars that are bright that are actually, we've captured it.
Right.
From a dwarf galaxy that the Milky Way is in the process of eating.
Right.
And so this cluster has been stripped from that, and it's still about 41,000 light years away from us. So
Well,
it's distant, and it's the remnant of our galaxy's previous
It's
meal.
the breadcrumbs of the
Indeed,
meal.
exactly.
So that would explain why it's really difficult to resolve, even with a
That's
high
right, because
power.
it's a long way away.
Yes, a long way away.
41,000 light years is a little much, but you'll see it as a fuzzy patch in the telescope.
Yes, definitely.
Well, that's a good overview of our telescopic challenge. Of course, finder charts for all of those are on the website, so you don't need to remember anything that we've said. bbc.co.uk/Sky at Night. And if you do get images of any of them, you can submit them to our Flickr group via that URL as well. Let's go around. Let's see one object out of the 50 that you're particularly looking forward to. Paul.
One object.
One object.
What about? All right. Well, I'm going to change my mind. After all of that, I'm going to go for, simply because you made it sound so alluring, Chris, M79, the after dinner breadcrumb.
Excellent.
So I'm definitely going to try and find that.
Distant cluster, Chris?
I am going to go and try and find NGC 2244 in Monoceros, purely because I never really find much in Monoceros before. It's an obscure constellation. I think it sounds like a wonderful
Okay,
sight.
the unicorn for you, Pete.
Kemble's Cascade again, because I've seen it in the past, but it's such a beautiful thing to look at, so I'm going for that.
Okay, Patrick, one object for the next few months?
M44.
The Beehive.
Beehive.
Good choice.
Yeah, and I'm going for Jupiter, so that not with the telescope, just the naked eye, just watching Jupiter move as the seasons wear on. I think cycling home, I'll keep an eye out for Jupiter most nights.
And the cars.
And the cars, definitely the cars. If you want to take part in the Moore Winter Marathon, then you can do so, of course. You can go to the website, bbc.co.uk/Sky at Night. Remember, there are 2 lists, so you can take part even if you don't have a telescope. And we've tried to pick objects that everyone can have a go at seeing. When you've done that, you can send them in on paper to us at the Sky at Night, the Moore Winter Marathon, BBC Bristol, White Ladies Road, Bristol, BS8 2LR. So hopefully there'll be 1 or 2 clear nights between now and the end of January. So we'll make that the closing date, and we'll go through the best of the entries and the best of our observations in March's Sky at Night.
Best of luck with the goal, and until next month, good night.